Well, it was announced today that there's been a deal that's been reached between the key negotiators of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act deal. Now, tomorrow, well, tomorrow is an important day, a very important day. Tomorrow, Derek Chauvin, the sick, deranged, mentally ill individual who for 9 minutes and 22 seconds had his knee on George Floyd's neck, causing his murder. Tomorrow, Derek Chauvin will be sentenced, and will we, the American public, wait to determine and hear what Judge Cahill sentences Derek Chauvin for. We know that there will be appeals, so there'll definitely be appeals. The defense has already been gearing up, saying that they're going to appeal whatever the verdict is. But, the number that's commonly being bantered around right now is 12 years. Now, 12 years for the murder of a black man in America. You be the judge, the jury, as to whether you think that that's fair or not. And the defense wants to use time served. So it might not even be 12 years. It might be something like 6 or 4 or even 2. You know, they're going to try to get it down to as little or if nothing as possible. Because, the saying goes, Black Lives Matter. But we know in Western society, especially in America, that Black lives don't matter. You know, if you have to keep saying something, you have to keep reminding yourself of something, you know that, there's a problem. And, we all know what the problem is. It's called systemic racism. But people, they'll try to act like, there are no problems. There's just bad people who do bad things. But if you have a pattern of people who perpetually and continue to do bad things, then it becomes a systemic problem in the society. And that's what we have. You know, recently there was an individual who, apparently the police said was swerving in between lines, but not much. Just failure to stay in between the lines, crossing over a little bit. No harm. Now, sometimes it's warranted that you pull a person over for doing that because, they could be impaired and intoxicated and they could cause a problem. So you do want to maybe check in on the person. They could be having a medical issue. There could be multiple reasons why a person could be swerving. Maybe they're having a heart attack or a panic attack. And, they just so happen to be driving when that was happening. Or they could be having an adverse reaction to a medication that they took. Or they could be having a tremor or seizure. So you want to make sure that, the person is safe and you keep the society safe. So the police pulling over the individual for having this issue was not the problem in this case. It was actually very well done. And even if you didn't have police, if you had a community response team and they saw these kind of things, a community response team could do those same things too, without somebody with a gun hiked up and, wanting to take out all their aggression on people that they feel are inferior to them. Anyway, here's where the story goes bad. Apparently, the individual, they didn't do any type of drug or impairment testing because, they got into an altercation with the individual, and it ended up being 7 police officers that punched this man to the point where it looks like he lost his sight on eye. I mean, if you've seen the pictures, it's just brutal. 7 men punching on one man for, not staying in between, the lines on the street. Now that really sounds like, a real crime. That real sounds like that could be really dangerous, you know. And we happen to know that the ethnicity of the gentleman in question who was assaulted excessively was, an African American male. There's no racism. They've reached a deal apparently today on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And the chief negotiators, Karen Bass, Congresswoman from California in the House of Representatives, Tim Scott, a United States Senator, the Republican from South Carolina, and Cory Booker, United States Senator from New Jersey. They were the chief negotiators of this George Floyd Justice and Policing Act bill. See, people don't think that I follow these things. I follow closely. We have to. You know, apparently, the sticking point in this bill was qualified immunity. Now, let me briefly explain to the audience what qualified immunity is. Qualified immunity basically means that any law enforcement officer can do what they please to the general public, and they'll have immunity, meaning that they won't be charged for any excessive force. So those 7 LAPD sheriff officers who abused that man for, well, swerving outside of the line and punching him to the point where they almost killed him, probably none of those officers will even lose their job, nor be held accountable for what they did. They're justified, anything that they do. That's why it was so groundbreaking and remarkable when, well, Derek Chauvin was charged and, well, convicted of second-degree murder in the case of George Floyd. It was groundbreaking. It was monumental because police officers oftentimes get away with murder, rape, and anything else that they want to do. And, well, it's because they have qualified immunity. They can't be charged. And they oftentimes, even if they lose their job in, well, one police jurisdiction, they can go to a whole nother jurisdiction or a whole nother state and get another job. Right back working on the police force. And they can have a whole laundry list of, well, abuses at one force. But no system transfers that over to the next one that they get on. So here it is, an officer could have killed somebody and got fired from one police force and go to another state and get on and get hired. And, well, do the same thing probably most likely again. You know, they said that Derek Chauvin did this to a 17-year-old. Similar thing, had his knee on a 17-year-old male's neck for a long period of time. And, well, he didn't get anything, well, nothing materialized of that. So it was no doubt that he was going to do it again. And he did. And this time it resulted in, well, what the whole world had to watch during lockdown, during the middle of a global century pandemic. You know, I hope that Derek Chauvin gets the book thrown at him. I hope there's no mercy for Derek Chauvin, because he didn't show George Floyd any mercy. So there should be no mercy for Derek Chauvin. There can be no tolerance for this type of bullshit going forward. And, you know, everybody can say, well, it wasn't racially motivated. It just was, well, it just so happened to be that way. But we all know that that's not the case. We all know that that's not how things play out in the United States of America, or as they now commonly refer to, the divided states of America. You know, they said it famously, I think it was Abraham Lincoln, a house divided cannot stand. You know, you can have rivalries. USC and UCLA is one of the biggest rivalries. USC, the Trojans. UCLA, the Bruins. Red and blue. You can have rivalries. People can paint themselves up. People can cheer on their home team. People can have pride in what their beliefs and ideologies are. All of those things are fine and dandy. They should be welcome in a healthy society. But what you cannot have is rampant and unchecked racism and discrimination. You know, I often say that, well, you can do everything you want to do except for two things in a healthy society. You can't be a racist and you can't be, well, a sexist. You can be anything else, but if you're those two things, I would make it extremely difficult for you to do anything in a society. You would be so marginalized in the society that you would give in, and you wouldn't want to be racist. You wouldn't want to be sexist. It wouldn't be beneficial for you at all. You'd have a miserable existence. And the real problem with the Western societies is people who are racist and sexist, not only do they not have a miserable, time in society, they're often the most rewarded and cherished individuals in the society because oftentimes those are the people that run the society. You know, a house divided can't stand. We're pleased to hear that there was a compromise. Hopefully, qualified immunity is stripped of law enforcement, and that people who commit crimes, regardless of whether they wear a badge or don't wear a badge, they're held equally accountable. You can't talk about equality and what Dr. King said and not really, believe in equality because, it infringes on the things that you get to do to other people who are marginalized in the society. So, good on them. Hopefully, George Floyd's Justice and Policing Bill lives up to the name, George Floyd, because, we know that George Floyd was monumental, and, he was an unwanted sacrifice for, an unhealthy system. A system that continues to do this all the time in and time and again. But, they've reached a deal. And now, the citizenry, all of us, we sit back and we wait to see what the state's compromise is to us as sovereign beings. And if it's not a good deal, we should say no deal. It's just like in that television show they used to have, where Howie Mandel, deal or no deal. What's in the briefcase? Oh, you can win $1 million. You take the deal. The banker is on the phone. If we the citizenry have to be told that we have to operate lawfully, if all the fundamentalists tell us thou shalt not kill, and then the people who are charged with obeying and enforcing the law, they're the ones that are the most lawless, and they break all the laws, you can't expect the citizenry to, behave accordingly. No, it won't happen. You really will have anarchy, and it'll be justified anarchy, because, you can't tell us that we can't break the law. We can't murder. We can't, rape and pillage and steal and plunder. But then those that are charged with, enforcing the law, they do all of those things and more. No, that's not how the cookie is going to crumble anymore. So, hopefully the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, there really is some justice in policing. And hopefully George Floyd didn't die in vain. Because, it'll be no deal if you try to stick George Floyd's name on that bill. And that bill is shit.